a delicious, hot, steaming portion of tech content coming your way, served fresh on concept soup. So take your seats, get your knives and forks, because it's going to be tasty. So, on the channel, you're used to seeing some PC builds. Well, today we're doing something a little different. We're going over servicing a PC, because not only in this system integration business that I'm running do I do full PC builds, you also do repairs and services in the local area. We had a couple of requests over the past, like 5 or 6 videos. What do you normally do in your non-PC building time with the business? What other services are you doing? That kind of thing. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity with this customer's PC coming in that we can have a look at how we go about servicing a PC. So this would be sort of going to be going over basic service, looking over a PC, seeing what's wrong with it, taking it from start to finish. It's going to be nice and simple, it's going to be nice and easy, and we're going to follow along together. So don't worry, I'll hold you by your little hand. But before we do that, we need to quickly plug the business with a quick sponsor spot, so I'll see you on the other side. This video is brought to you in partnership with JCPC Customs.com, purveyors of fine gaming PCs. But why buy from JCPC Customs? There are 3 pillars to what we do: enthusiast-grade build quality, stunning good looks that you are proud to display, and all at a fair price. But how do you get your hands on one? Well, we've got 3 methods. We have the ready-to-go PC section. These are PCs that are already built, ready to ship out with optimized specifications, so excellent for the most fuss-free experience. For those that want to spec out themselves, you can use our Configurator listing, and this is where you can choose some lists of parts that we have available to us. But for the most granular experience, the truly custom experience, you can use our custom spec service, and this is where you fill out our Google form. You can choose every component, even down to the model number, and any other accoutrements that you also want with the PC can be accommodated here. So thank you very much for watching, and head to jcpccustoms.com to learn more. Wait, don't go anywhere just yet. Quick one, I've got a discount code for you for jcpccustoms.com. Use code YTFREE at checkout. You get free shipping on anything on the website. That includes PCs, so that's like a £30 saving right there. Anyway, on with your regularly scheduled content. And we're back. Welcome to the actual proper video. So I got this query, came in via our Facebook chat. So basically this person had picked up this used gaming PC for a really good deal actually, which we'll get into in a minute. But it's not quite exactly how they want it. Like they're not able to control the RGB, they're having problems with some of the fans. They're having intermittent problems in their games as well, so they just wanted a generic service of the PC, just so that it's up to the standard that we would put together for a brand new PC, if that makes sense. So let's go through what we did for the PC. So the customer sent through their message, of course, so we can put up some of the images of what they sent on the screen. Don't worry, there's no identifiable confidential information there, and you can see from the first photo that we've sent here, it's kind of shows that the person that's built it probably doesn't maybe have the best experience building PCs, because the first thing I noticed when looking at this is that the fans are backwards. So you've got air being pulled from the back and from the top into the PC and then pushed towards the front and then out of the front. Now this is a bad idea for several reasons. One, because on the back and the top you don't have as much dust filtration. Sometimes on the top you do, but on the back you certainly don't. So you've got no way of stopping any sort of dust getting trapped. It's all going to come straight into the case. Then you're also blowing air out of the front of the case as well, which isn't ideal because again you're blowing it against a dust filter which is on the front of the case, which is going to actually stop the dust getting out, so you're going to get dust accumulation. Also the temperatures aren't going to be quite as good here because there's only a very thin panel on the top of this PC to draw air in through the top, which means that you're going to have a broadly negative pressure system, and that also sort of builds up the dust in the PC because you're pulling out all the dust from all the little crevices in the PC. There are a few other things as well that we noticed later on, but from a first inspection I'm getting that kind of impression that perhaps it's one of those ones that was put together by somebody that's less experienced. But that's not to say it's a horrible job, it's just to say that, it's just probably wasn't done by a professional, let's say. The next picture you can see is sort of like a screenshot from a program called Spec. So this is a program that I actually often encourage the customers to use this, but he already did it. It gives you a summary of what's inside the PC, helps you sort of get a footing on what might be going on with the PC. So for some reason, I think this version of Spec is probably outdated or something, but this is actually a Ryzen 7 5800X CPU. The memory here is running at 2666 megahertz. I know it says 1332 there. You actually have to double it because DDR is double data rate. So actually that's 2666. Basically, that means that this is either RAM that's too slow for a Ryzen system, or it's not running on its XMP profile. So there's one thing we've spotted already without even having the PC in front of us that is wrong with the PC. Motherboard X570 Aorus Ultra, very nice board, no problems there. We've got the RTX 3080 on board as well. I'm not sure why it says 2 gig of VRAM, because that's definitely not right. It must be a problem with the program. And then we've got a 1 terabyte gigabyte SSD there. So actually, this is a pretty baller system. This is a very high-end system indeed. And the guy told me he paid about £1,300 for this whole system, which is unbelievable, almost a bit suspect. But I told him that is an incredible price, because normally a new version of this would be going for something like 2,100 to 2,400 as a complete system. So gotta say, he picked out a good deal there, but didn't come without its problems. So what we did is we got the PC in, and we can now see it in the video clip on the desk here. So it's basically a big glass box. I can't remember what brand it is. I think this might be some kind of Cooler Master. I can't really remember, if I'm honest. But it's one of those big glass heavy cases, so it doesn't have like a mesh on the front or anything like that. So it's probably a bit of an older design. First thing I noticed is a huge GPU sag on this graphics card. So you can see how the right side of the graphics card is really leaning down. So that's something we could talk about later. Looking at the fans, yes, the fans are indeed backwards, and same along the top of the case here. And then you've got exhaust through the front, and this just makes absolutely no sense. And then moving on, we're just looking at the video card connectors here, and you can see that one of the cables isn't quite connected properly. And this is sort of a classic mistake when putting in a power supply cable into a video card, is that there's oftentimes the little 2-pin and then the 6. You have to make sure the 2-pin gets in before the 6-pin, otherwise it gets trapped behind it, because it's got that little plastic arm piece on it. And it's really easy for that not to go in, especially if the cables are really tight. So it's something to really look out for. It's actually usually just a grounding wire, I think, those other two, but just to be sure, you should definitely be plugging in all of your connectors, and that could potentially cause problems. So the customer also asked us to install a new 2TB NVMe SSD as well, so we do have that with us. I think we just went for a Western Digital SN550, like the classic one, to use as a game drive. So we'll be putting that in as well, as you see on the video here. But the main purpose was really the diagnostic and trying to sort out the PC that has been perhaps not built in the most optimal way. So the first and probably easiest thing to do would just be to go in and flip all the fans. So we did that, so we just unscrewed the fan on the back here, as you can see, flipped it around to its correct orientation. Now, changing the rest of the fans out is actually a bit harder than I thought, because the top fans are actually on a tray, and you can't take the top piece off this case, so you have to remove the tray, do it all on the tray, and then put the tray back. So we'll probably just speed through all of this, but suffice to say, this case design was annoying. It was really annoying, because you have to pull out the frame from the front, take them off the frame, put it back on the frame, and you have to do the same on the top. It actually took ages to do this, so it's not one of the case design features that I particularly like, but we powered through, we flipped all of the fans around, and that's going to make not only RGB look nicer, but also you're going to get better cooling performance in the case as well. So now we take a look at the back panel where all the cables are kept, and actually the person's done a good job of cable management. But in my opinion, there is a difference between good cable management and pretty cable management. So what's happened here is everything has been tied down within an inch of its life, which makes servicing the PC or changing anything in the PC really, really annoying. And this is why when you see all the build-tages on my cable management, it's not very strict, and it's deliberately not very strict, because it makes it hard to go in and move things around if you need to. If you tie everything down super tight, really clamp down, not only do you introduce a bit of tension into those cables, but really the problem is that you can't get in there and change things when you need to. So we've had to undo all of these cable ties very, very carefully with our scissors. Yeah, be careful if using scissors for this, because you can easily just chomp straight through all the wires, so just be careful. We're going to try and disconnect everything from all the hubs, and then we're going to see what we can do from there. So now that all those cables have been removed from the hub, we can move them all back through and try and work out how we're going to plug these back in and if there's any problems. And one problem that I did notice is that this the cooler basically has 3 ML120 fans from Corsair on it, and the other fans in the case are LL120s, which means that you can't plug them into the same hub. So that's the problem that's happened here. The previous person that's put this system together has tried to put 2 different kinds of Corsair fans into the same lighting node hub, and that's why it's not working, because you can't, they've all got different light patterns, you can't run them off the same hub. So later on we actually managed to fish out the liquid cooler's own hub. We put that in, we connect the liquid cooler's fans into that, and then the case fans can go into the existing lighting node that's in the back, and that's going to make all the RGB work. So that's fairly simple work. Other stuff we're doing here, we're just tidying up some of the cable management. I think some of the routing options are a bit suboptimal. The little cable grommets on the side, I leave those on, but if there's a cable grommet on the bottom of the case where the cable's come up from the bottom, I usually just snip this straight off, because it's really annoying. Whenever you put a load of cables through it, the grommet just looks really gross and disgusting. I just cut it out and have a hole there instead, which actually ends up looking a lot neater. We're also tightening up some of the cable management from the fans on the front, because he had them stretching right across the case into the rubber grommets, whereas actually some purpose-built holes on the case to allow fan cables to go through, so we're just going to route those through to there as well. And now we've put the graphics card back in, and now we're going to just feed the power cables over the top of the graphics card instead. Now normally I would actually put those cables underneath the graphics card and wrap them round, but because this is such a huge graphics card with a massive heatsink and it's sagging, I think putting it over the top will actually be a bit more beneficial, because one, it's going to look neater because you're not going to have big bunches of cables, it's not going to obstruct the GPU fans if it goes over the top, and also having them on the top will give a little bit of tension to help hold that end up in the meantime, whilst the customer goes out and picks up a GPU brace, which I recommended to them. The only issue with moving the cables into this direction is that the cable management in the rear is much harder because you've got thicker cables going up higher. But that is something that we'd have to live with. We're going to tie this down with some cable ties, and then we're going to call it a day there. This does come with one of those sort of vanity plates, if you like, to put over your cable management, though I find in general those things are just terrible and I tend not to use them. Just leave it on there, tie it down with the tie down points that are available. So now that the physical parts of the PC are done, namely flipping the fans over, sorting out the fan hubs, sorting out the cable management, and trying our best to help alleviate some of that GPU sag, as well as installing the new SSD, what we're going to do now is do a little bit of a cleanup on the PC, and the easiest way to do that is just to go for a blank slate and reinstall Windows. It's actually probably a good idea, probably once every year or two, just to give it a quick fresh install of Windows, because it's going to keep everything nice and fresh, get rid of all those residual files. You don't have to do this. If you practice good stewardship on your PC, and you're keeping your downloads folder clear, you're not keeping loads of programs installed that you don't need, then perhaps you don't need to do that. But from my experience dealing with the public, they don't know how to keep their PCs clean software-wise. So that's why I went for a clean install, just to go for a completely blank slate so that we know that there's no software clashes or anything like that. But before we do that, we need to update the motherboard BIOS. Get that up to the latest version. I always do this. Anytime I do a service, get this up to the latest version, because oftentimes it will alleviate problems, particularly with things like RGB and other connected devices. Also, you sometimes get extra benefits from upgrading the BIOS, such as Windows 11 support and that kind of thing. So why not? So we go ahead and update the BIOS, and we'll just let that run through, and then we'll change some other settings in the BIOS. Then we can move on to reinstalling Windows. So there are a few things we did set up in the BIOS. So these were XMP. So that's making sure our RAM's going to run at its rated speed, so not the base speed. We also turned on resizable bar support as well, just in case there's any titles that can take advantage of that. And that was it for the BIOS. You don't need to change anything else. We saved and exited, and then we went on to install Windows. We didn't need to do the fan curve in the BIOS because we're going to use iQue. There was a Commander Pro hub in the back, so we're going to use iQue to sort of do all the fan curves, because it's much easier to do that in software there. So we're just going to speed through installing Windows now, because we have actually done a full guide on how to do a clean install of Windows, which we'll put a card for up in the corner there. So we're speeding through, we're choosing all the privacy settings that are going to be the least intrusive for the customer. And then we just got our old bag of tricks on our external SSD to help get things set up really quickly. So these are things like the NVIDIA graphics driver. That's often the first thing I will install, and just to get the full resolution of the screen. And there are other things that we'll install as well. So these are things like the NVIDIA chipset drivers, as well as any other drivers that are included. Things like, RGB Fusion to control the RGB on the graphics card. We also installed Corsair IQ in order to control all the fans and just make sure that they were all working, and thankfully they were. And other things to do on the PC here are just little things that I like to do, like I always turn off the fast startup in the power settings to ensure that every time you shut your PC down, it starts up clean every time. I turn off things like delivery optimization, which might slow down your network speed, but apart from that, it's a very vanilla install with not much you need to do here. So all can be done within 30 minutes, absolutely no problem. So as you can see here, we're in IQ just setting up the fan curves. So we can set up custom curves for the video card and for the CPU. So the three that are intaking on the front to go onto the liquid cooler, we're going to set that so that it's tied to the CPU temperature. So as the CPU heats up, the fans will speed up. Whereas the other fans, so the 3 exhaust fans, we're going to tune those more towards the graphics card so that we can exhaust all the heat that comes off the graphics card. So the hotter the graphics card gets, the more exhaust power you'll have from the system to help drain off that heat. And then the final thing to do basically is to go check for updates in Windows Update, check for updates in the Windows Store, let all those run through. And then as a final thing before I hand it back to the customer, I use command prompt, an elevated command prompt, which you do by typing in CMD and then Control Shift Enter to run it in administrator mode. You just run sfc/scannow. That's going to run through the PC and clean up any corrupted files. Pretty much all the time it will find something that is corrupted, so it's always worth doing at the end of a service. And then we're ready to hand it back to the customer. Now, we didn't do a physical cleaning of the system, like dusting it or anything like that, because the customer frankly didn't want to pay for it, so that's fine. We did the job that we came in to do, which was installing a new SSD, which we initialized. We reinstalled Windows nice and fresh, and we sorted out all the Corsair RGB. So I'd consider this one an overwhelming success. So thanks for joining me on this journey of servicing a PC. And we'll see you again next time, where we will probably have a lovely, jubbly PC build for you. So like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that stuff. All right, bye-bye now.